Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a bit about your life before your near-death experience? Sure. Before everything changed, I worked in the Juvenile Court Probation Division for King County in Seattle. I loved my job, especially working with probationers. I often joked I'd do it until the day I died, though I had no idea how prophetic that would be. What happened that led to your near-death experience? It all began on May 5th, 2006. I had a kidney stone, which I'd dealt with before, but this time, the pain was different. It wouldn't go away, so I ended up in the emergency room. How did you react when you first went to the hospital? I didn't think much of it. I was used to the routine. They'd give me morphine, and I'd feel better. But this time, they found an infection too, so they decided to keep me overnight for surgery the next day. How did the surgery go? The surgery itself went smoothly, but what we didn't know was that I was one of the rare cases where the antibiotics didn't work properly. I ended up going septic, and my body began to shut down. That sounds frightening. What do you remember from that time? What struck me most was how calm I felt. As a Christian, I believed that after death, I'd go to heaven. So, when I realized I was dying, I thought, I'm going home. What happened next? I was clinically dead for about an hour and a half, but during that time, I had an experience that was beyond anything I expected. I felt like I was soaring, not just through the hospital, but straight into the sky, faster than I could blink. It was like the Bible says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. What was heaven like? It was pure peace. I felt completely at home, like I had finally found where I belonged. Everything around me, trees, flowers, the air, seemed to welcome me. I felt deeply loved by everything there. Did you want to see anyone in heaven? More than anything, I wanted to see Jesus. I didn't even realize how strongly I desired it until I was there. Heaven wasn't just a place. It was where I wanted to be with him. What happened when you found Jesus? I walked through a forest and the trees seemed to whisper, "He's going to see the King." When I reached an open space, I saw Jesus surrounded by angels and other people who had passed. I didn't run up to him. Instead, I knelt and looked at his feet, overwhelmed by his presence. All I could think was, "You did this for me," and kept repeating, "Thank you, thank you." How did Jesus look? His love for me was undeniable. When I finally looked up at his face, it was like he had completely forgotten all my past wrongs. I felt nothing but love and forgiveness. It was a moment that made me truly understand the depth of God's grace. What happened after that? Jesus told me, "It's not your time. Go back." I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had a mission. He had something for me to do, and I had to return. Was it hard to come back? At first, yes. I had to leave paradise, and it was painful, but when I reached the point where I had to return to my body, I felt a strong sense of purpose. I knew I had a story to share. How did you feel when you returned to Earth? When I woke up, the doctors were preparing to pronounce me dead. But the moment I re-entered my body, the heart monitor started beeping, and they rushed to treat me. It felt like a huge shift, from peace to physical pain. But I knew my purpose had changed. Has this experience changed how you live now? Absolutely. I see life and death in a new light. Every day feels more precious, and I live with a deeper awareness of eternity. I'm more focused on loving others and sharing God's love. I'm not afraid of death anymore, because I know it's just a transition to something far greater. It's changed the way I view my family too. Our relationships now feel more meaningful than ever. Did you see anything else in heaven that surprised you? Yes, I was amazed by the animals in heaven. There were so many, and they were all in perfect harmony with each other. It reminded me that God cares for all of creation, not just humans. How has this experience impacted you spiritually? It's given me a deep sense of purpose. I now understand that every action we take on earth has eternal significance. I feel a strong obligation to share my story, to bring as many people as I can to know the love of God. I see each person as deeply loved by Him, and I want to help others experience that love. Even seemingly inanimate objects like trees and flowers seem to have a life of their own. It was all in perfect harmony too. No deterioration or flaws were present. It exceeded my expectations in terms of beauty. It's difficult to explain, but it seemed as though I suddenly understood everything. Instead of using words to communicate with me, He was transferring knowledge straight into my spirit or mind. I gained an understanding of things I had never known before about God, heaven, and life. I retained some of this knowledge, but some of it diminished when I got back to my body. Among the most significant was a greater comprehension of God's love. Although I believed I understood what it meant for God to love us, I had a far deeper experience. I also learned more about the character of eternity, the significance of the decisions we make here on earth, and the existence of spiritual conflict. However, some things are beyond my ability to express. They are ideas that are difficult for our earthly minds to understand. Yes, I did realize that there are spiritual forces at play in our world, both good and evil. I came to see that a lot of our problems and difficulties have a spiritual undertone that we frequently ignore. I've become more deliberate in my prayer and in donning what the Bible refers to as the full armor of God. You're right. Death no longer frightens me. I am aware that it is not the end, but rather the beginning of something much more exquisite than we could ever dream of. That doesn't imply that I'm eager to pass away. Rather, I think God has a purpose for me here that I want to fulfill. But I'm excited to go back to heaven when the time is right. Indeed, there was no such thing as time in heaven as we do here. It was all always there. It has helped me realize how fleeting our problems and hardships on this planet are in the big picture. I'm also more conscious of how I spend my time here now that I know that each moment is valuable and will always have meaning. I'm far less critical now because of it. I came to see that God's kindness and grace are far more than we often acknowledge. It's about embracing Jesus and His sacrifice, not about being flawless or according to a set of standards. Knowing someone's spiritual status is something I'm a lot more cautious about now. No one can really know a person's heart but God. Sorry to have interrupted you. True enough, I'm not done yet. Certainly let me carry with the conversation. Following my experience in paradise and my grandmother's advice to bring as many of us back with you as you can, I feel a strong need to tell my tale and assist others in realizing the existence of heaven and the love of God. Knowing that our acts here have everlasting repercussions makes me attempt to live every day with that understanding. As I have seen God's love for me, I now view each individual as someone He loves profoundly. I've become more understanding, patient, and willing to spread the love I had in paradise to others as a result. I also cherish my familial ties more than ever because I understand how vital they are, not just now, but forever. Yes, I was taken aback by the sheer number of animals in paradise. There appeared to be a specific location for them, and they were everywhere. Along with species I had never seen before, I also observed animals that are found on Earth. It seemed as if they were all in perfect harmony with one another and their surroundings. I found it to be a powerful reminder that God is concerned about all of creation, not just people. No, not immediately. Jesus and my family took up so much of my attention that I didn't truly engage with the animals. However, I could feel their happiness and tranquility, as well as all of paradise. They seem to be giving God their own kind of thanks. It's difficult since it's not adequately described by worldly terms. It was more colorful than anything we have here. Light was all around, yet it wasn't harsh. Rather, it felt cozy and welcoming. It's difficult to describe how everything looked to be alive. Even seemingly inanimate things like trees and flowers appeared to have a life of their own. It was all in perfect sync, too. No deterioration or flaws were present. It exceeded my expectations in terms of attractiveness. It's difficult to explain, but it seemed as if I immediately understood everything. Instead of using words to communicate with me, he was transferring information straight into my soul or mind. I gained an understanding of things I had never known before about God, heaven, and life. I retained part of this information, but some of it diminished when I got back to my body. Among the most significant was a greater comprehension of God's love. Although I believed I understood what it meant for God to love us, I had a much deeper experience. I also learned more about the character of eternity, the significance of the decisions we make here on earth, and the existence of spiritual conflict. However, certain things are beyond my ability to express. They are ideas that are difficult for our earthly brains to understand. Yes, I did see that there are spiritual forces at play in our world, both good and bad. I came to see that a lot of our problems and difficulties had a spiritual undertone that we often ignore. I've been more deliberate in my prayer and in donning what the Bible refers to as the full armor of God. You're right. Death no longer frightens me. I am aware that it is not the conclusion, but rather the beginning of something far more exquisite than we could ever dream of. That doesn't imply that I'm eager to pass away. Rather, I think God has a purpose for me here that I want to complete. But I'm excited to go back to paradise when the time is right. Indeed, there was no such thing as time in paradise as we do here. It was everything always there. It has helped me understand how fleeting our problems and hardships on this planet are in the big picture. I'm also more conscious of how I use my time here now that I know that each moment is valuable and will always have meaning. I'm much less critical now because of that. I came to see that God's kindness and grace are far more than we often acknowledge. It's about embracing Jesus and his sacrifice, not about being flawless or according to a set of standards. Knowing someone's spiritual status is something I'm a lot more cautious about. Now, no one can really know a person's heart but God. Has your prayer life been impacted by this experience? Indeed, I now consider prayer to be much more important and genuine. After having such a close-up experience of God's presence in paradise, I now approach prayer, feeling more like I'm speaking with a loving Father. I pray more candidly, openly, and expectantly now. Everything in paradise welcomed you, you said. What more would you say about that feeling? Never in my life have I had such a full feeling of belonging. On this planet, we often battle thoughts of inadequacy or disconnection. There were just no such emotions in paradise. There was an enormous sensation of welcome and affection, as if everything, from the grass underfoot to the air surrounding me, were saying, "You belong here. We're so glad you've come." Indeed, it has. Although our physical bodies are significant, I came to understand that they are just transitory homes for our immortal souls. I felt more me in paradise than I ever did in my body. It has caused me to become less preoccupied with how I look and more focused on developing my soul. We lack words to describe the colors I witnessed, therefore it's difficult. If you think of the brightest blue you've ever seen, the hues of paradise pale in contrast. There were also hues that I had never seen before, colors that are not found in the spectrum of our planet. These amazing hues made everything appear to sparkle from inside. Heaven seemed to be both close and far away at once. Being with Jesus or my family made me feel intimate and intimate. However, I also had a feeling of boundless beauty that extended in every direction. In order to accommodate everyone and everything in perfect harmony, heaven seemed to be as big as it needed to be. Indeed, there was an inexplicable sense of life and responsiveness to everything in paradise. Around me, the light appeared to have a life of its own, and the mountains shifted like waves. There seemed to be some kind of awareness present in even what we would consider inanimate things, all focused on giving thanks to God. Even though I was preoccupied with my personal experience, I felt as if everyone else there was feeling the same amount of love, pleasure, and tranquility that I was. All were unified in their love and adoration of God, even though it seemed like each person was enjoying their own ideal experience. It was challenging at first. I didn't want to go since heaven is so lovely and ideal. However, I believe that God had a reason for sending me back, which made me feel at ease about going back. Sharing what I've gone through and assisting others in getting ready for eternity is now my purpose in life. For me, worship now means something very different. Worship was a continuous condition of being in heaven rather than only an action. Everyone and everything was worshiping God all the time, not out of duty, but out of pure love and happiness. I now approach worship with a fresh fervor and depth as a result of it. I didn't, sorry. I was so absorbed in the experience of paradise that I was unaware of what was going on earth or with my body. It wasn't until Jesus informed me it wasn't my time that I realized I was going back. Indeed. I now see everything I do as a chance to give earth a little piece of paradise. I strive to approach whatever I do, whether it be my job, my relationships with other people, or even simple activities, with the same love and pleasure that I had in paradise. Additionally, it has increased my intentionality in allocating my time and money in ways that will last a lifetime. I felt that there was continuous contact between heaven and earth, even if I didn't see any particular prayers being answered. Prayer is a genuine and powerful link between us and heaven, and I realized that God is deeply aware of and active in people's lives on earth. Indeed, I did saw angels in paradise and understood their mission. They seemed to be doing God's will and worshiping Him all the time. Though always in deference to God's authority, I realized that they have a bigger impact on our lives than we often acknowledge. In addition to giving me a stronger sense of urgency to communicate my religion, it has also increased my tolerance and love for non-believers. I've come to see that everyone's path is different and that God loves everyone, no matter where they are in their spiritual development. I make an effort to respect other people's free choice by sharing my experience in a manner that welcomes rather than forces. I did learn a little bit about this complex theological issue. It seems difficult for us to completely understand with our earthly wits how God's sovereignty and human free choice interact. I realized that God's love is so enormous that He always seeks to make the best of every circumstance, even when those decisions might harm us or others. Even though I didn't experience any evil in paradise, I did learn more about its nature from this. The reality of evil and suffering on earth became much more obvious after I experienced absolute kindness and love. I realized evil is a distortion of God's beautiful creation, basically the lack of God's goodness. It reaffirmed to me how crucial it is to shine God's light into this world's darkness. There is no longer any fear of dying. Death, in my opinion, is not a conclusion, but rather a passage to something far more exquisite than we could ever dream of. That doesn't imply that I'm eager to pass away. Rather, I think God has a purpose for me here that I want to complete. But knowing what is ahead, I will gladly greet my time when it arrives. I want people to understand that they are much more loved by God than they can ever know. Heaven is real, and we cannot fathom how lovely and flawless it is. Earthly decisions and deeds have everlasting consequences. A connection with Jesus is what prepares us for eternity, and that is what I want others to grasp most. It is more important to accept His love and forgiveness than it is to be flawless or adhere to a set of laws. Even though my experience was powerful and life-altering, I want to stress that God's narrative of love for humanity, rather than mine, is what matters most. By telling others about my experience, I aim to inspire others to pursue God for themselves and adopt an everlasting viewpoint. I appreciate you letting me tell about my experience. We can all learn a lot from your narrative about life, death, and the hereafter. It is absolutely amazing. Thank you again.